Hello. So this week we will talk about normalization. So, what is normalization? So normalization is a process used to organize data to minimize redundancy and ensure the data integrity. Okay, because when we're trying to design or modify the database, the goal is ensure the data structured efficient. We don't want sometimes the a lot of data is redundant, duplicate, it's not unique. Sometimes this is something not very efficient way you can look up the data. So this is where normalization comes in. So it can be applied in normally two scenarios. For example, we're trying to build a new database. Okay, so we need, after we already have the ended in entity entity relationship model, normalization will happen and ensure the structure is optimal. So if we do have some other existing database, such as we have the flat files or spreadsheet, we're trying to improve those data structure, to make it more efficient. So at that time, we will try to normalization. So what's the problem? Okay, if we do not using we do not trying to normalize the data. Okay, so main issues is redundancy. Okay, so look at this table. When you look at this table, you can see some of them, is very redundant. For example, in this line, project's name Evergreen, they happened like keep happening. Projects numbers keep, repeating, and you can see some others like job classification right here is duplicated, and this one is also is related to the job classification. So all those stuff will make your data very redundant, and sometimes it's not easy to add those data, like adding, updating, or delete data, right? So if you want to delete one person, sometimes you have to adjust the entire table. So this is the reason we need to normalize our data, make our structures make it more efficient to add it, and at the same time it's easy to look it up. So right here is very important concept they call the functional dependency. So functional dependency, it means one attribute actually depend on another attribute. So for example, right here, we say charge hours actually depend on the job classification. So that means if you know the job description, job classification, you will know how many they charge hourly. Okay, so this is something we call the functional dependence. Okay, so this dependency is very important in normalization, which can help you to identify, which attributes should be grouped together in another table. Right? So there are two types of the functional dependency. One of them they called partial dependency. That means a non-key attribute is dependent on only part of the primary key. Okay, so for example, we know A and B is primary key, which can come up the some other attributes C and D. So that means C and D depend on A and B. So we can see in some of the case, C is depend on the B. So as we know, B is a part of the primary key. So C is non-primary key attribute. So we can see B to C is partial dependence. Okay, so partial dependencies tend to be very straightforward and easy to identify, because as long as you know the primary key, you will know some of the parts of the primary key, can come up with other non-primary keys attributes. Okay. However, there's another dependency we call the transitive dependency. Transitive dependency is occur when non-key attribute depend on another non-key attribute rather than directly on the primary key. For example, we know X is a primary key, okay, but X can come up Y, and Y can come up Z. So if Y and Z, you can tell Y can come up Z. At this time, Y is not primary key or not part of the primary key, Z either. So Y to Z is transitive dependency. Okay, unlike partial dependencies, transitive dependencies are more difficult to identify. Now, they're trying to understand, unnormalize the data. So as we said, if the data is not normalized, that means data would be very redundant, and also it's very hard to edit, right? So in this example, we have this table. So this table basically we store unnormalized data. So you can see some of the data, some of the attributes, they have multi-valued attributes. So multiple employee in one cell, across the same project, listed in the same row, makes it difficult to parse the data. Okay, more important, so some employee details are repeated across multiple rows. Okay, so when you look at this data, sometimes it's not easy to look up. For example, if you're trying to find out, one of the employee, 103, you don't know who is 103, right? You don't know who is 103, you don't know what's 103's job class, you don't know what's 103's charge hour and hours billed, right? So those unnormalized data is not easy to organize, it's not easy to look up, and it's not easy to edit. Okay, so we need to make sure to edit them and normalize the data to make sure people can easily use those data. So there are 3 steps, okay, to normalize the data. Okay, the first step is called the first normal form, okay, which we call the first normal form, or 1NF. We need to remove all the multi-valued attributes. We need to break down large table into smaller or more focused one, ensure each attribute is autonomic. Okay. Second step, we need to eliminate the data redundancy. Okay, so we need to ensure each piece of information is stored once and only once. Okay. Then we need to make sure ensure the functional dependency. We need only group related attributes together based on dependency. Okay, so the first step, the first normal form. Okay, we need in this table only contain no repeating groups or multi-valued attributes. So we need to separate the data into the different table, or we ensure each attribute only contain single value. So in this one, we can just find the match, okay? Employee number match to employee name and the certain job classification and charge hour and our bill and total charge, right? So this is the first step. We need to make sure there's no, there's no multi-value in one cell. Okay, so right now is the first step. Now we finish our first norm form. Now, second one, we need to identify the primary key. Okay, this is important. Once we have this first norm form, we need to confirm, which attributes can be the primary key. Okay, so as we say, primary key should be unique. Okay, and uniquely to identify each row. Okay, so you can see right here, if you only use the project number, obviously cannot be the primary key for one, right? Because it's duplicate, right? Because 15 can be 103, 15 can be 101. So that means it's not capable to be a primary key. Okay, so in that case, we can consider using the project's name, number, and employee number. When they combine them together, we consider they are primary key because it's unique. Okay, so if you say 15 plus 103, okay, combine them together, this is unique number. Okay, 15 101, 15 105, 15 106. So in that case, we consider project number and employee number is the primary key for this table. Okay, so now we know what is the primary key, which is the project number and the employee number. Now we need to try to identify the dependency. As we say, there's two types of dependency. One dependency is the partial dependency. It comes from the primary key. Okay, so let's see if you know the project's number. Okay, project number. Can you tell the project's name? Yes. So in that case, project's name partially depend on the primary key, right? So we can tell project's name depend on project's name, number. Okay, there's something else depend on project's number. So that means if you know the project's number or name, you can tell exactly the employee name. No, you cannot tell the employee number. You cannot tell the job description, classification, or charge, or hours, or total charge. So in that case, there is only one we can tell from the project number. Another one is employee name number. Employee number, based on employee number, can you tell the employee name? Yes. Based on the number, can you tell this employee's job classification? Right? Yes. Okay. Also, can you tell how much charge for this employee? You can tell, right? So, based on that, you can basically, based on the employee number, you can tell employee name, classification, and how much you charge hourly. Okay? Right. So now we can just find out there's a partial dependency is this too. So project number, you can tell the project's name. Employee number, you can tell employee's name. Job classification, and charge hours. Some people will ask, so employee number, can you tell the hours bills? So the answer is no. You cannot tell because employee number could, maybe tell the information, about this employee, but you don't know how exactly, how much hour they billed, right? Okay, so now we need to find out, do they have transitive dependency? Transitive dependency depend on the non-primary key attributes depend on another non-key attributes, right? So right here, let's see, can you tell, so right here is the project's name. Based on project name, can you know any of the job classification? No. Charger? No. Okay, but how about job classification? Based on the job, you can tell how much charge. Right, you can tell. So this is one of the transactions, the transitive dependency. So which is right here. Okay, so how about the rest of them? There's the rest of them is charger and the total hours. Okay, so those things basically we need to make sure how you include in the another table. So based on that, we can tell right now some of them already goes to another dependency, right? So project's name, which is from the first normal form, it's get out to this dependency. Employee name is come to here. Job classification is come to here. Charge hours come to here, right? So right now, this table only left hours, employee number, project's number. And right now, the partial dependency, we have those things right here, okay? Then we can tell the charger hours in the transitive dependency. Based on this result, we can actually do sample to create the tables. The first table, we can, based on the project's number, we can tell the project's name, right? So this is one of the table. Based on the employee number, and we can tell employee name, job description, a job classification, and the charge hour. So this is a table. Another table is right here, is dependent because we already know loads of them will become, right? So you will have primary key right here, assign the hours and the total charge, okay? So there's no total charge. So if we put total charge right here, so this one will be right here, okay? The last one is job class and charge hour. That is a third normalization. That means we will take out the job classification to another table with charge hour. So basically this part, we will have another table. So totally we have 4 tables. Okay, total 4 tables. Now let's see some comparison. So after the two normal form, okay, you can see this table, one table turns to the three tables. If you include the transitive the dependence, this one table will convert to another two tables, so total four. So now you can see this table, there's three tables. There's no redundant, no duplicate. It's easy to find the data you want and easy to add it, right? And easy to add it. Okay, so this is for this week. Make sure you understand the normalization and why do we use normalization.